Hey guys, Matt from Firelance Media, and today we're going to talk about the Aimpoint Micro S1 shotgun sight. So earlier this year, I was out at SHOT Show hanging out in the Aimpoint booth with a couple of friends of mine. I love the Aimpoint products, and I've got a couple of H1s on my ARs right now. In fact, I'm dying to get my hands on one of the Comp M5s. But what really caught my eye was something that I saw Larry Vickers promoting, and that was the Micro S1 shotgun sight, and it really piqued my interest. So I begged and pleaded, and Aimpoint was kind enough to send me out one for evaluation. But before I get into talking about the S1, let's talk a little bit about red dots on shotguns. So there is a lot of debate whether or not you even need a red dot on a shotgun. For me, on this Remington 870, I've had a Burris fast fire on it for a couple of years now. Typically on a tactical shotgun like this, shorter barrel, it's got a little bit of pick rail up top, and you can throw a red dot sight on it, whether it's a normal H1 or T1 or just a reflex sight like this Burris. So after running this through a couple of classes, I was a big believer in using a red dot, especially at distance with slugs. So this has been my go-to for a couple of years. I said, well, for the past year or two, I've been doing a lot of clay shooting, a lot of trick shooting, and my go-to has been a Benelli M2. So I've been shooting this shotgun for the better part of a year and a half now. And this is the Micro S1 on it right now. And you can see, I don't know if you can really tell, but it sits incredibly low on the vent rib. And that's the big part of this. It's not a normal red dot that you would just throw on a shotgun. This Aimpoint was specially designed to sit close and low onto the vent rib. Now, it's not exactly simulating the front bead of the shotgun, but what it's doing is giving you a good reference point. So a red dot sight may not be for everyone, especially one that costs $700 and is used for a limited variety of applications. Now, a lot of the hunting shotguns that are out there, your basic hunting shotguns, aren't even going to be $700. So why would you need a red dot sight on it like this? Well, that's going to come down to personal preference. For me, I kind of dig it, and here's the reason why. When the sight comes to you, it comes in a little box. And what they have in it are a bunch of mounting options for you to get it onto the vent rib of your shotgun. So depending on the size and the thickness and the width of that vent rib, you should be able to fit it to most of the popular hunting shotguns out there. Now, I did try to get it onto this 20 gauge Remington 1187, and it just didn't have a combination that seemed to work with this vent rib. Now, I spent about, I don't know, a half an hour trying to play with different combinations of the mounts that they put in the box, but I just couldn't seem to get it to work on this 20 gauge. I took some digital calipers and I measured the Benelli vent rib, and I used the diagrams that were in the box, and everything worked perfectly. It went on in about 2 seconds. They even included all the tools that you need to put it on. So let's talk about some of the specs, right? It is an 18mm tube. You've got a 6 MOA dot, which if you're used to an H2 or a T2, this is going to look like a dinner plate. But the fact of the matter is you've got 12 stops of brightness. So on a bright day like this, having it up around that 8 or 9 setting really gives you a wonderful reference point when looking through the sight. What took me the longest time was transferring from trying to look down the barrel of the gun itself and using the red dot. I noticed that after about 20 or 30 rounds, I really had it nailed, and it was very easy to forget about the housing of the sight itself and just see that red dot. Now, it wasn't as fast to acquire clays that were flying by using the red dot, but at distance with slugs, this thing was fantastic. So we're sitting right here right now at about the 50-yard line on my backyard range. And we used a variety of slugs to get it zeroed in. We used some Rio Royal Star, it's the low recoil slugs. We used some Federal rifled slugs, and it just, the Benelli just ate them all up. But what I found was it took me a little while to get the Aimpoint zeroed, but I did get it dialed in, so I was basically hitting thoracic size shots at about 50 yards, which is fine for me. That's about as far as I'm willing to shoot a slug with any accuracy. Once we got the sight dialed in on a target, then we just wanted to verify on some steel. So I used some of this Tack Strike steel that I have on my range, and I was really surprised at just how accurate the Benelli was with the Micro S1 on it. It was basically point of aim, point of impact at 50 yards, which is really no surprise when you're throwing an ounce slug downrange. So you can see here by the footage that it was pretty accurate all the way out at distance. Now, as I started to do some other things, throwing some clays by myself or, doing some trick shots, shoveling it off the end of the barrel, I noticed that I was picking up that red dot very, very quickly, and I was not missing. This thing is fantastic. When I started to go back to the tactical shotgun and look through that reflex sight, I noticed with a much smaller dot that my eyes had grown accustomed to the 6 MOA dot of the Micro S1. Just something to think about if you switch between dot sizes quite a bit. So where do you mount this thing, right? So what I did was I mounted it just forward of the receiver, just forward of the handguard, about halfway down the vent rib. Now I played with it being up close near the receiver or all the way down by the front bead, and I really found it most comfortable, fastest to pick up when I put it right there, just about halfway down the vent rib. So the manual says that for a reason, and I guess they nailed it. When I look through it, I'm not even looking at the front bead anymore. The way that the dot sits, it's not lollipopping on top of the front bead, it's sitting just above it, it's hovering above it. So when I aim in, it is just a big, bright red hubcap waiting to shoot some things. So I was really impressed with the brightness. I keep it at about 9 or 10 in bright daylight. Anything more than that and it starts to starburst in my eyes, anything lower than that, and I'm really not able to pick it up as rapidly. In terms of the size itself and the feel, it feels just like an H1 or a T1. It's about the same size, you just don't have that extra height with the mount. If you're familiar with Aimpoints, same mechanisms for elevation and windage and brightness. The coating is great. It comes with a little bikini scope cover for when you're keeping it in storage. And speaking of storage, it all runs off a CR2032 battery, which they say will last you a couple of years. So if you keep it shut off between seasons, I'm sure it'll last quite a few years of hunting. If you leave it on all the time, let's say at a mid-level brightness, they say it's going to last a couple of years, but I like to replace my batteries every year regardless. So at the end of the day, once again, do you need a red dot? I don't know, is Aimpoint going to sell 1 million of these? Probably not, but I really like the way that it gave me accurate shots on steel and on targets with slugs out at distance. So if you're up close and personal, if you're doing some turkey hunting, you're doing a little bit of bird hunting, having the red dot can't be a disservice to you. I think it just takes a lot of practice to get used to it. Take it out, shoot some clays, shoot some trap, and I think you're going to find that you really like how fast you can acquire your target through the Micro S1. In my opinion, it's a little bit pricey for what it is, but I think you're getting that Aimpoint quality, waterproof down to 15 feet. It's basically bomb-proof. So I think you're looking at a very niche product, but it's a good one regardless. So that's it, the Micro S1 from Aimpoint. I hope you enjoy this. For any more of these types of reviews and information, check out firelancemedia.com or just subscribe to everything at Firelance Media. Thanks, I'll see you soon.